Hey everyone, welcome back. Are you ready to dive into something really mind-blending?
I think so.
I hope so, because today we are talking all about transhumanism.
Oh, right.
And to do that, I've brought in an expert
Hello.
who will help us wade through all of this. So transhumanism is this idea of using technology to enhance human capabilities
Yeah.
and fundamentally change what it means to be human. And we're going to be drawing all of our information from a fascinating podcast that I listened to
Okay.
with an expert on this subject, where we're going to be talking about things like radical life extension and enhanced abilities,
Okay.
even merging with animals.
Okay.
It's going to be a wild ride, so buckle up. So first of all, what is transhumanism?
Well, I think it's important to start with the idea that transhumanism isn't just some kind of
Yeah,
science fiction fantasy. This is
yeah.
a growing global movement with serious thinkers, researchers, and even
Mm.
some pretty significant funding behind it.
Yeah, yeah.
So, to answer your question,
Okay.
transhumanism basically is about
Yeah,
using technology to overcome what we traditionally think of as inherent human
I
limitations.
see. Okay, so
Yeah.
that makes sense. So like things like disease and aging,
Exactly.
like those are limitations that we have.
Yeah, things like disease, aging, even cognitive abilities.
Okay.
Transhumanists believe we can transcend those, right? With things like genetic engineering, nanotechnology, artificial intelligence.
So it's not just about living longer. It's
Right.
about
Yeah.
fundamentally changing what it means to be human.
Exactly. You hit the nail on the head. The expert that we're following quotes transhumanists as saying they want to literally rewrite our DNA,
Wow.
creating Homo sapiens 2.0.
Wow.
They envision a future where humans have enhanced physical and cognitive abilities, a future free from disease and suffering, and even the potential to explore entirely new levels of consciousness.
So essentially they're saying they want to create superhumans.
That's one way to put it, but I mean, if you think about it,
Yeah,
the potential benefits are actually quite remarkable.
I can see that.
Imagine a world without cancer, Alzheimer's, or even just the aches and pains of getting older.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
when you put it that way, it
yeah,
sounds pretty appealing.
exactly. And
Right.
think about the potential for human achievement and creativity if we could significantly extend the human lifespan.
Right. Yeah.
The expert even mentioned Aubrey de Grey, a leading researcher in the field of aging, who predicts that people alive today
Oh, wow.
could potentially live to be 1,000 years old.
1,000 years old.
Yeah.
That's like a millennium.
Right.
That's mind-boggling. But I mean,
Yeah.
I guess the question then becomes like,
Right.
what would the world even look like if
Yeah.
people were living that long?
Yeah. What would happen to our planet?
Right.
What would happen to our resources?
Right. What would happen to the economy?
To society?
Yeah, to everything.
All these things would have to be completely rethought and reevaluated.
Right.
Yeah. It's pretty wild when you think about it.
Yeah. So, okay, so we've got this idea of like these amazing potential benefits, right?
Yeah.
Like, eliminating disease, extending lifespan, enhancing abilities, like
Right.
really kind of like optimizing the human experience in a lot of ways.
Yes.
But I think we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about the flip side,
Oh, absolutely.
right? The potential risks and concerns.
Yes.
Because as with any powerful technology, there's always that possibility
Of course.
of unintended consequences,
Always.
right? So what are some of the concerns that people have raised about transhumanism?
Well, one of the big worries is that in our quest to enhance ourselves, we could inadvertently create some kind of molecular biological nightmare. I mean, we've already seen unintended consequences with genetically modified crops, for example.
Right? Yeah.
And some experts believe that similar things could happen if we start manipulating our own genes.
Yeah, that's a chilling thought.
It is, and it's not the only one. There's another concern, too.
Okay.
This ethical nightmare of creating human-animal chimeras, beings that blur the lines between humans and animals.
Yeah, I could see how that could be a problem.
Yeah, imagine the moral and legal complexities of that.
Right.
I mean, we're talking about potentially creating a whole new category of being, and we haven't even fully figured out how to treat the ones that we already have.
Right, yeah. Like,
Yeah.
where do you even begin to sort through something like that?
It's really complicated. And then there's also this potential for these technologies to be used for harmful purposes. Imagine if terrorists got their hands on genetic engineering or other advanced biotechnologies.
Right, right.
Things could very quickly spiral out of control.
Yeah, that's a scary thought. It's like, we're opening Pandora's box.
Right.
And once these technologies are out there, There's no putting them back in.
Exactly. And, the expert we're following, he compares transhumanism to an arms race,
Okay,
where nations and individuals might feel pressured to pursue these technologies just for fear of falling behind,
I see.
which is a scenario that could easily lead to global instability and conflict.
So it's like this double-edged sword, right?
It really is.
Where you've got these incredible potential benefits, but also these, like, really terrifying potential risks.
Yeah, there's a lot to consider.
Yeah. And that, even beyond those sort of practical considerations, there's another layer here that I find particularly intriguing, and that's the spiritual and metaphysical implications of all of this.
Okay.
Because, if we're talking about fundamentally altering what it means to be human,
Right.
what happens to our understanding of, the soul, consciousness,
Right.
our place in the universe?
It's a big question.
Like, does it change?
Well, that's where things get really fascinating, right?
Okay.
Transhumanist thinkers like Nick Bostrom, who's a philosopher at Oxford University,
Mm-hmm.
believe that enhancing our perception could actually open us up to entirely new realities.
Okay, now you've really got my attention.
Yeah, it's pretty wild stuff.
Tell me more about that.
So, Bostrom suggests that we currently only perceive a small portion of all possible modes of perception.
Okay.
He believes that by merging with animal DNA, we could unlock new sensory experiences and literally perceive things that are currently beyond our comprehension.
So, like, we could literally see things that we can't see now.
Exactly. It's like gaining access to entirely new dimensions of reality.
Wow, so we could, like, develop the senses of a wolf
Right.
and experience the world in a totally different way.
Yeah.
Or maybe even tap into some kind of, like, sixth sense
Yeah.
that allows us to perceive things beyond the physical realm.
Right. And the expert even connects this to the source materials discussion of animals potentially being able to perceive the supernatural realm.
Wow, this is incredible. I mean, we're talking about enhancing our bodies,
Yes.
our minds, and even our spiritual perception.
That's a lot. Yeah.
So what does all of this mean for us as individuals and for humanity as a whole? I mean, this is huge, right?
It is. I mean, that's the ultimate question, isn't it?
Right.
And it's one that each of us needs to grapple with as we move forward in this rapidly changing world.
Yeah.
Transhumanism forces us to confront some fundamental questions about what it means to be human, what we value,
Yeah.
and what kind of future we want to create.
Right.
It's definitely a lot to process.
It is. It is. But I'm glad we're having this conversation. Now, I know we touched on some of the potential risks, but I'm curious to hear more about the specific concerns that experts have raised.
Okay, yeah.
Because, I imagine there are people out there who are like really looking at this stuff closely and saying,
Oh, yeah.
wait a minute.
Yeah, the expert we're following highlighted some pretty chilling warnings
Okay.
from individuals who have been deeply involved in researching and studying these technologies.
Hey, yeah, I'm all ears.
One of the people he discussed was Dr. Leon Kass,
Okay.
who served as chairman of the President's Council on Bioethics
Oh, wow.
during the Bush administration, the President's Council on Bioethics.
Okay, so that's pretty high up there.
Right.
What exactly was Dr. Cass worried about?
Well, so he actually wrote this book
Okay.
called Life, Liberty, and the Defense of Dignity,
Okay.
where he argued that humanity is essentially on the operating table,
Oh, wow.
scheduled for wholesale psychic and physiological redesign. He viewed transhumanism as a serious threat to human dignity,
I see.
and he warned against the dangers of tampering with our very nature.
So these aren't just like fringe concerns.
No.
We're talking about like respected figures in the field of bioethics, like sounding the alarm.
Exactly, and Dr. Koss wasn't alone in his concerns either.
Okay.
The expert also mentions Professor Francis Fukuyama,
Okay.
another prominent scholar who actually called transhumanism the world's most dangerous idea.
The world's most dangerous idea.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So.
He feared that it could lead to catastrophic consequences for humanity, potentially even undermining the very foundations of our society.
Yeah. I mean, that's
Yeah.
a pretty bold statement.
It is.
But I mean, are these concerns like just theoretical?
Right.
Or are there like real world examples that kind of illustrate these potential dangers?
Well, one area that the expert highlighted
Okay.
was the development of genetically modified foods.
Okay. So like frankenfoods.
Exactly.
But how does that connect back to transhumanism?
Well, it's all about the unintended consequences of crossing species boundaries.
Okay.
Whether it's in our food
Right.
or in our cells.
I see. Okay.
So the expert in the podcast points to some research that suggests
Yeah.
genetically modified crops have led to health problems in animals.
Hmm.
And some scientists worry that similar issues could arise for humans.
That's a bit unsettling.
It is.
It's like we're conducting this massive experiment on ourselves
Right.
without fully understanding the long-term effects.
Precisely. And what's even more concerning is that we're already deeply entangled with genetically modified foods.
Right.
It's not like we can easily go back.
Right.
If we can't even control the unintended consequences of GMOs,
Yeah.
are we ready to tinker with our own DNA?
Right. Yeah.
What safeguards can we put in place to ensure responsible innovation?
Yeah, that's a great question.
It is.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like there's a lot of potential for things to go wrong,
Yes.
even with the best intentions.
Absolutely. And the expert also uncovered some information
Okay.
about the use of transgenic animals
Okay.
in the pharmaceutical industry.
Transgenic animals, what does that even mean?
So these are animals that have been genetically modified
Okay.
with human genes.
Wait, they're putting human DNA into animals?
Yeah, and they're being used to develop new drugs.
That sounds like something out of a science fiction movie.
I know, right?
Wow.
It must sound like science fiction, but it's actually happening right now.
Okay.
And it's being done to bypass some of the ethical and regulatory hurdles
Right.
associated with testing drugs on human subjects.
Okay.
Basically, they're creating hybrid creatures that they can experiment on. Without the same level of scrutiny.
I mean, I understand the need to
Right.
develop new drugs and treatments,
Of course.
but this just feels ethically murky to me.
I know.
Like, are we
And
creating...
it's a slippery slope.
Yeah, are we creating a whole new category of beings
Right.
just to experiment on them?
Yeah, you've hit on a key ethical concern.
Right.
The experts specifically mentioned the use of transgenic pigs
Okay.
to grow humanized organs for transplantation.
So they're literally breeding pigs with human DNA
Yes.
in hopes of creating organs that won't be rejected by the human body.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
I mean, that could potentially save countless lives.
Right.
But it also blurs the line between species in a way that just feels deeply unsettling to me.
It is.
You know, if we're creating beings that are part human,
Yeah.
don't we have a moral obligation to consider their well-being and their rights?
That's a huge ethical question and one that society hasn't fully grappled with yet.
Right.
Right. And it's not just happening in labs behind closed doors.
Okay.
The expert pointed to this Reuters article
Okay.
where scientists openly admitted
Yeah.
that they're already comfortable with up to 50% human-animal integration.
50%.
Yeah, and they're actually calling for a public debate on how far we should go
Wow.
with these human-animal hybrids.
That's a lot more human DNA than I would have imagined.
It is.
And they're asking the public, like, how they feel about
Right.
raising these creatures to full maturity.
It's a big question.
It feels like we're just, like, rushing headlong into this brave new world
Right.
without fully considering the implications.
It's a situation that definitely requires careful consideration
Yeah.
and ethical debate. I
Right.
mean, what kind of lives will these creatures have? Will they be treated as animals?
Yeah.
As something else entirely?
Yeah.
What rights will they have?
Right.
These are questions that need to be answered
Uh-huh.
before we go any further down this path.
Yeah, it sounds like we're on the verge of creating a whole new class of beings.
We are.
And
Yeah.
if we can't even agree on how to treat the ones we already have humanely,
Right.
how can we possibly navigate the ethical complexities of creating new ones?
It's a huge challenge.
It is.
And it's not just about the ethical treatment of these new beings.
Yeah.
There's also this concern about rogue scientists
All right.
operating outside of ethical and regulatory boundaries.
Right. So without proper oversight,
Right.
these technologies could fall into the wrong hands
Exactly.
and be used for harmful purposes.
That's right.
So it's not just about, like, well-intentioned scientists trying to improve the human condition.
Right.
We also have to worry about...
Individuals with less altruistic motives.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about some of the potential dangers.
Yeah.
But I know that transhumanists
Right.
also envision a future where these technologies are used to enhance our bodies and our minds,
Yes.
not just to create new forms of life.
Right.
What are some of the possibilities in that area?
Well, transhumanists are exploring a wide range of technologies
Yeah.
aimed at enhancing our physical and cognitive abilities.
Hmm.
They envision a future where humans are stronger,
Okay.
faster, more intelligent, and more resilient.
So we're talking about, like, the potential for creating superhumans?
Yeah,
I have to admit, that part does sound kind of exciting.
it does. It does.
What kind of technologies are they looking at?
They're exploring everything.
Okay.
From genetic engineering
Okay.
to brain-computer interfaces.
Okay.
Imagine being able to download information directly into your brain
Wow.
or enhance your memory with a simple implant.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
But I can't help but wonder, like, wouldn't that kind of technology create a whole new level of inequality?
Right,
What about people who can't afford these enhancements?
right.
Are they just going to be left behind?
That's a valid concern.
Yeah.
Transhumanism has the potential to exacerbate existing inequalities
Right.
and create new ones.
Yeah.
If these technologies are only available to the wealthy elite,
Right.
we could end up with a society that's even more divided than it is today.
It's like a science fiction dystopia where, like, the enhanced have all the advantages
Right.
and the rest of us are just struggling to keep up.
Exactly. And it's not just about economic inequality.
Mhm.
There's also this potential for these technologies to be used for control and manipulation. Imagine a government that can monitor your thoughts or influence your emotions
Right.
through brain implants.
That's some serious Orwellian stuff.
It is.
Yeah, it sounds like something straight out of a nightmare.
Yeah, it's a valid concern and one that transhumanists themselves are aware of.
Okay.
Many of them emphasize the importance of ethical guidelines
Great.
and democratic oversight
Right.
to prevent these technologies from being used for harmful purposes.
Okay, but who gets to decide what those ethical guidelines are?
Exactly.
And how do we ensure that they're actually being followed?
It's a big question.
Yeah, it seems like we're stepping into a minefield
We are.
of ethical and societal challenges.
Yeah, no doubt.
But let's shift gears for a moment and talk about some of the more, I don't know, radical
Okay.
and perhaps even bizarre aspects of transhumanism.
Right.
So the expert mentioned something called post-genderism.
Okay.
What is that?
So post-genderism is this concept
Okay.
that challenges traditional gender roles
Okay.
and envisions a future where we can use technology to transcend those roles.
Okay.
Some transhumanists believe that we can create a society
Yeah.
where gender is fluid and customizable,
Okay.
or even eliminate gender altogether.
So we're talking about a world where there are no men and women.
Right.
Everyone's just like gender neutral.
Potentially.
How would that even work in practice?
Well, they envision a future where reproduction is achieved through advanced biotechnologies like artificial wombs
Okay.
and genetic engineering.
Right.
This would potentially allow individuals to choose the physical characteristics of their offspring,
Okay.
including their sex.
Okay.
Some even speculate about the possibility of creating androgynous beings that
Mhm.
possess both male and female characteristics.
It's definitely a radical idea.
It is.
And it raises a lot of questions, about the role of biology and culture in shaping our identities.
Of course.
Like, would we even recognize ourselves as human
Right.
if we were to fundamentally alter something as basic as gender?
It's definitely a challenge to our current understanding of what it means to be human.
Right.
And it's not just about gender. Transhumanists are also exploring the possibility
Yeah.
of merging with animals.
Merging with animals.
Yeah, literally blending human and animal DNA.
Now, that sounds like something straight out of Greek mythology.
I know, right?
But why would anyone want to do that?
Well, the expert mentions the work of Nick Bostrom again.
Okay.
Bostrom argues that humans are currently limited in our perception, and that merging with animals could expand our consciousness and open us up to entirely new possibilities.
Okay.
He even suggests that it could allow us to connect with unseen intelligences.
Wow.
Or explore different dimensions of reality.
So, like, we can have the eyesight of an eagle
Right.
or the echolocation abilities of a bat.
Yeah,
It sounds fantastical.
it does.
But it also raises some, like, unsettling questions.
It does.
Like, what would it mean for our sense of self if we were to merge our consciousness with that of another species?
Right.
Would we still be human?
Those are profound questions.
They are.
And it brings us back to that fundamental question that we keep returning to. What does it mean to be human?
Right. And it seems like transhumanism is pushing us to confront that question
It is.
in ways that we never even imagined.
Yeah, it's both exciting and terrifying at the same time.
It is.
We're talking about potentially altering the very fabric of our being.
Yeah.
And there's no way to know for sure what the consequences will be.
It's definitely a journey into uncharted territory.
It is.
And as we move forward, it's crucial that we proceed with caution,
Absolutely.
engage in open and honest dialogue about the implications of these technologies,
Right.
and develop ethical guidelines to ensure that they're used responsibly.
Could not agree more.
Well said. Okay, so this deep dive has definitely given me a lot to think about.
Good, good.
But before we wrap things up, I'd love to hear more about that project you mentioned earlier.
Okay.
The one that's trying to make contact with, like, ghosts and aliens and even God.
You're talking about the Sophia Project
Yes.
at Arizona State University?
Yes, that's the one.
Okay, yeah.
It sounds absolutely incredible.
It is pretty fascinating.
Are they seriously trying to contact supernatural beings?
That's exactly what they're doing.
Wow.
The Sophia Project, which is funded by the Templeton Foundation,
Okay.
is focused on verifying and/or making contact
Okay.
with various entities, including ghosts, aliens, angels, demons, and even God.
Wow, that's wild.
It is.
It sounds like something straight out of a science fiction novel.
Yeah, it really does.
But it also raises some really interesting questions
It does.
about the nature of reality.
It does.
Like, if a university is seriously studying the possibility of contacting, otherworldly beings,
Yeah.
does that mean we're like on the cusp of some major paradigm shift
Possibly.
in our understanding of the universe?
It's definitely a possibility, and it goes to show
Yeah.
just how far transhumanist thinking has come
Right.
and how it's pushing the boundaries of what we once thought possible.
This entire conversation has been mind-blowing.
Good.
I feel like I've just taken a crash course in the future of humanity,
I like that.
but I know we've only scratched the surface of this incredibly complex topic.
We have transhumanism is a vast and multifaceted subject with profound implications for the future of our species.
And I think it's a conversation
Yes.
that we all need to be a part of.
We do.
It's not just something for scientists and philosophers to
Yeah.
debate in ivory towers.
It affects all of us.
Yeah, the choices we make today about these technologies
Yes.
will have a ripple effect for generations to come.
Absolutely. And I think it's time to shift our focus from the theoretical to the practical.
Okay.
What does all this mean for us as individuals?
Okay.
How can we make sense of these rapid advancements
Right.
and prepare ourselves for the future that's rushing towards us?
I mean, it kind of feels like we're standing at a crossroads, right?
Yeah.
Facing a future filled with both, like, incredible promise,
Right.
but also potential peril.
Precisely. And that's why it's so important
Yeah.
to approach these technologies with both curiosity
Right.
and caution.
Yeah.
We need to be asking ourselves some tough questions
Yeah.
about what kind of future we want to create.
So where do we even begin? Like, how can we as individuals
Yeah.
even wrap our heads around something
Right.
as complex and rapidly evolving as transhumanism?
Well, one way to approach this is to consider how transhumanism might impact our lives
Okay.
in very concrete ways.
Okay.
For example, think about healthcare.
Okay.
Transhumanist technologies hold the potential
Yeah.
to revolutionize how we treat and prevent diseases.
Right. Like we've already touched on, like the possibility of using gene editing
Right.
to cure genetic disorders.
Exactly.
And the idea of like growing human organs in transgenic animals is both fascinating
Right.
and like a little bit unsettling.
Well, those are crucial.
Yeah.
For instance, if we develop the ability to significantly extend lifespans,
Yeah.
who will have access to these life-extending treatments?
Right.
Will it create a society
Yeah.
where the wealthy can afford to live for centuries,
Yeah.
while everyone else faces a more traditional lifespan?
Right. And then what about the social and economic implications
Right.
of like people routinely living to be 150 or 200 years old?
Exactly.
Like how would that impact retirement,
Right.
social security, even like the concept of generational change?
All important questions.
Yeah.
And it's important to remember that transhumanist technology are not inherently good or bad.
Right.
It's how we choose to develop and use them
Right.
that will determine their impact on society.
So it's not just about the science.
Right.
It's about the values that we
Yes,
bring to the table.
Precisely.
Like, do we prioritize like individual freedom and autonomy above all else?
Right.
Or do we place a higher value on like social cohesion and equity?
Right.
Like these are the kinds of conversations we need to be having as a society.
Absolutely. And it's important to approach these conversations with an open mind,
Right.
recognizing that there are no easy answer.
Right.
We need to be willing to listen to different perspectives,
Yeah.
weigh the potential benefits and risks,
Mhm.
and make informed decisions that align with our shared values.
Now, I remember you mentioned that even some governments are getting involved in transhumanist research.
Oh, yeah.
Like, what are the implications of that?
Well, the expert in the podcast highlighted the fact that agencies like DARPA,
Okay.
the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency in the U.S.,
Mm-hmm.
are investing heavily in research
Okay.
aimed at enhancing soldiers' capabilities.
Okay, so like creating super soldiers
Essentially, yeah.
with like increased strength and endurance and even like cognitive abilities.
That's right.
It sounds like something out of a comic book.
I know, right?
But doesn't that raise some serious ethical questions?
Oh, absolutely.
Like, what happens when you have soldiers
Yeah.
who are essentially enhanced humans?
Right.
Like, do they still have the same moral compass?
Right.
Are they more likely to follow orders blindly?
Right.
Even if those orders are unethical?
Those are all valid concerns.
Yeah.
And it raises the specter of a potential transhuman arm race
Hmm.
where nations compete to develop ever more powerful and sophisticated human enhancements
Right.
for military purposes,
Yeah.
which is a scenario that could easily lead to increased global tensions
Yeah.
and even armed conflict.
It's a sobering thought for sure.
It
It
is.
seems like every step forward in this field comes with a potential dark side.
Unfortunately, yeah.
But I'm curious, what about the spiritual side of things?
Okay.
Like, how does transhumanism impact our understanding of ourselves as spiritual beings?
That's a fascinating question.
Yeah.
Some transhumanists believe that these technologies could actually enhance our spiritual awareness
Hmm.
and even allow us to connect with higher realms of existence.
Okay.
Remember Nick Bostrom's suggestion that merging with animal DNA
Yeah.
could unlock new modes of perception and expand our
All right.
consciousness?
Right.
Some take that a step further
Okay.
and suggest that these enhancements could open us to spiritual experiences that are currently inaccessible to us.
So instead of just enhancing our physical and cognitive abilities,
Right.
we could potentially enhance our spiritual abilities as well.
That's the idea.
That's a mind-blowing concept.
It is. It is.
But before we get too carried away with all the philosophical implications,
Okay.
let's bring it back down to earth for a moment.
All right.
What are some practical things that, like, people can do
Yeah.
to prepare themselves for this, like, rapidly changing future?
Well, I think one of the most important things is to stay informed.
Right?
The field of transhumanism is evolving rapidly,
Yeah.
and it's crucial to keep up with the latest advancements and debates.
Right.
There are a lot of great resources available online,
Mm-hmm.
including articles, podcasts, and even online courses.
I would also recommend checking out the website of the Future of Humanity Institute
Okay.
at Oxford University.
Yeah.
They have some really thought-provoking articles and research
Okay.
on transhumanism and its implications.
That's a great suggestion, and I think it's also important to engage in conversations about these issues
Yeah.
with friends, family, colleagues.
Right.
The more we talk about transhumanism and its potential impact on our lives,
Yeah,
the better equipped we'll be to make informed decisions about the future.
I completely agree. And don't be afraid to challenge your own assumptions and biases,
Right.
because transhumanism forces us to confront some pretty, like, deep-seated beliefs
It does.
about what it means to be human.
It really does.
And it's important to be open to new perspectives and ways of thinking.
Absolutely.
Well said. This deep dive has been an incredible journey.
It has.
We've explored the potential benefits and risks of transhumanism.
We have.
We've delved into the ethical and philosophical implications,
Indeed.
and even touched on the spiritual dimension.
Right.
I don't know about you, but I'm feeling both excited and a bit overwhelmed
Yeah.
by the sheer scale and complexity of this topic.
I'm right there with you. It's a lot to process.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to approach this with a sense of both wonder and humility.
Hmm.
We're standing on the precipice of a new era.
Yeah.
And it's up to us to navigate these uncharted waters with wisdom and compassion.
And remember, this isn't just about the future.
Right.
It's about the present.
Right.
The choices we make today
Yes.
will shape the world of tomorrow.
They will.
So stay informed, engage in thoughtful conversations,
Good advice.
and be open to the possibilities, both wondrous and challenging, that lie ahead.
Well said. And to our listeners, we'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yes.
What are your hopes and fears about the future of humanity?
Yeah.
Share your perspectives with us on social media using #TheDeepDive.
Yes, please do.
Let's continue this conversation together.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of transhumanism.
Absolutely.
Until next time, keep exploring,
Yes.
keep questioning, and
Raise.
keep diving deep.